One slap at a wedding, 6 security cameras, 300 witnesses, and one video that destroyed a millionaire's life. Blake Sutton thought he was untouchable, rich, powerful, connected. But when he hit his pregnant wife in front of everyone, the truth couldn't be buried. Not this time. The twist, his own father turned against him, chose justice over blood, chose truth over empire. But was it really justice or just damage control? This story has mistresses, courtroom drama, and a decision no father should ever have to make. Drop a comment with your thoughts, smash that like button, and subscribe because this gets intense fast. They say you never really know someone until they show you who they are. Blake showed me in front of 300 people, and I still didn't leave. Not that night anyway. Let me take you back. 72 hours before my life shattered like champagne glass on Italian marble. The security footage exists. 6 different angles. High definition. Audio so clear you can hear the exact moment his palm connected with my face. The sound technicians at the news stations said it registered at 92 decibels. Loud as a lawnmower. Loud enough to stop a string quartet mid-note. But I'm getting ahead of myself. 3 days before the slap heard around the internet, I stood in our bedroom at the Sutton estate, trying to zip a dress that no longer fit my 7-month pregnant body. Blake appeared in the doorway, impeccable in his Tom Ford tuxedo, hair perfect, smile practiced. "Not that one," he said. His tone was light, but something flickered behind his eyes. "The blue Valentino. Trust me." And I paused. "I like this one. It's comfortable." "Vanessa." He crossed the room, placed his hands on my shoulders. To anyone watching, it would look affectionate, but his fingers pressed just hard enough to hurt. "We're representing the family tonight. My cousin's wedding, the blue one. Please." That's how control works. It doesn't announce itself. It wears a tuxedo and says, "Please." I changed into the blue dress. It was tighter, less forgiving. Exactly what he wanted. My best friend Jill arrived to drive with us to the venue. She took one look at Blake's face and pulled me aside in the hallway. "What's wrong with him?" she whispered. "His jaw's doing that thing, Barry." "What thing?" "That clenching thing he does when he's angry about something he won't talk about." I glanced back at Blake. He was checking his phone, jaw tight, shoulders rigid. "He's fine, just work stress." Jill wasn't convinced. "Nessa, I know you don't want to hear this, but something's been off with him for months. Ever since you got pregnant." "Drop it, Jill, please. Not tonight." The Sutton estate sprawled across 40 acres of Connecticut coastline, old money pretending to be older money. Blake's father Wade had built his fortune in oil and natural gas, then diversified into tech investments. The family name opened doors. It also closed them. Wade Sutton greeted us at the entrance to the garden pavilion. 62 years old, silver hair, eyes like chips of blue ice. He shook Blake's hand, nodded at me. "Vanessa, you're looking well." Translation, "You're getting fat." Blake's mother Diane appeared next, a former beauty queen who traded her crown for a wedding ring and spent 30 years regretting it. She air-kissed both my cheeks, then stepped back to appraise my dress. "Blue is slimming," she said. "Smart choice." Everything with the Suttons was coded language, compliments that stung, concern that controlled. The wedding ceremony was beautiful. Blake's cousin married her college sweetheart under a canopy of white roses. I cried during the vows. Hormones, probably OPB, or maybe I was mourning something I couldn't name yet. At the reception, Blake started drinking. Not unusual. He always drank at family events, said it made his mother bearable. But tonight felt different. He downed 3 scotches in the first hour. His hand on my lower back grew heavier, more possessive. "I need to use the restroom," I told him. "Again, you just went." "I'm 7 months pregnant. I live in the bathroom now." His fingers dug into my spine. "Don't be long." In the marble restroom, I splashed cold water on my face and stared at my reflection. When had I started asking permission to pee? When had his touch started feeling like ownership instead of affection? A woman I didn't recognize entered, fixed her lipstick, and left. The door swung shut with a soft click. For a moment, I was completely alone. It felt like the last moment of peace I'd ever know. When I returned to the reception, Blake was talking to his father near the bar. I couldn't hear the conversation, but Wade's expression was severe. Blake's face had gone red. Wade said something sharp, turned away. Blake drained his glass and immediately ordered another. I should have left then. Should have called Jill. Gone home. Packed a bag. But pregnant women don't run easily. And wives in designer dresses at family weddings don't cause scenes. So I stayed. The band played. Guests danced. The cake was cut. Champagne flowed. Blake's cousin threw her bouquet. Everything proceeded according to expensive plan. Then Blake's college roommate approached our table. Marcus something. Tall, friendly, successful lawyer now. He'd always been kind to me. "Vanessa, you look radiant," Marcus said. "Pregnancy suits you." I laughed. "You're legally required to say that." "I'm serious. You're glowing." But Blake's hand found my thigh under the table. His grip was painful. "She's exhausted," Blake said. "Barely sleeping. Complains constantly." "I don't complain," I said quietly. "Yes, you do." He smiled at Marcus, but his fingers tightened. "Pregnancy makes women emotional. You'll see when you have kids." Marcus looked uncomfortable. He made an excuse and left. I tried to pull away. Blake held firm. "Don't embarrass me," he whispered. I was just talking. You were flirting. With Marcus Blake. He's your friend." He was being polite. "You laughed too loud. You touched his arm." "I didn't touch anyone." His face was close to mine now. Too close. His breath smelled like expensive scotch and barely contained rage. "I saw you." This was new territory. Blake had always been jealous, possessive, but he'd never been delusional before. "I think you've had too much to drink," I said carefully. Wrong words. His expression shifted. Something dark and final moved behind his eyes. "Let's get some air," he said. Not a suggestion. He stood, still gripping my arm, pulling me up with him. My chair scraped against the stone patio. Several guests glanced over. Blake waved, smiled his practiced smile, and led me toward the fountain at the edge of the garden, away from the lights, away from most of the guests, away from help. "Blake, you're hurting me." "Good. Maybe you'll remember this conversation." We reached the fountain. The sound of water should have been peaceful. Instead, it muffled everything, created privacy he didn't deserve. "I don't know what you think I did, but you're wrong," I said. He released my arm and stepped back. For a second, I thought maybe he'd calm down. Maybe the fresh air was helping. Maybe we'd walk back to the reception and laugh about this tomorrow. Then I saw his hand coming. The physics of violence happened faster than thought. His palm connected with my cheek before my brain registered movement. The sound was sharp, clean, a crack that cut through music and conversation like a gunshot. My head snapped sideways. Pain exploded across my face, bright and hot. I stumbled backward. My heel caught on the fountain's edge, arms windmilling. I fell. My hips struck marble. Water splashed up, soaking my blue Valentino dress. For one eternal second, the world stopped. The string quartet froze mid-note. Conversations died. 300 people turned to look. I sat in 6 inches of fountain water, my cheek on fire, blood pooling in my mouth where I'd bitten my tongue. Blake stood over me, his hand still raised, his face a mask of shock and rage. Then the Sutton family training kicked in. Diane materialized from nowhere. "Oh my God, she's fallen. Someone get help." She knelt beside me, her dress soaking in the fountain. To everyone watching, she looked like a concerned mother-in-law, but her eyes were calculating, already spinning the narrative. "Vanessa, sweetheart, are you all right? Those heels are much too high for someone in your condition." My mouth wouldn't work. I stared at her, at Blake, at the circle of faces pressing closer. Blake transformed before my eyes. The rage evaporated. His face crumpled into concern. He reached for me. "Baby, I'm so sorry. Why didn't you tell me you felt dizzy?" I found my voice. It came out shaky but clear. "You hit me." "What? No. You lost your balance. I tried to catch you." "You hit me." Diane's hand closed around my wrist. Her manicured nails dug in. "You're confused. The fall, The baby. Let's get you inside where you can rest. Jill pushed through the crowd. Nessa, I saw everything. I'm calling the police. No police. Wade Sutton's voice cut through the chaos. He'd appeared on the scene, commanding attention without raising his voice. This is a private family matter. Blake, get your wife inside. Diane, handle the gas. Someone restart the music. Mr. Sutton, your son just assaulted her, Jill said. Wade's cold blue eyes fixed on her. I saw my pregnant daughter-in-law take a bad fall. Blake tried to help. You saw the same thing, didn't you? The weight of Sutton money and power pressed down on the scene. Guests began to murmur agreement. Yes, she fell. Yes, the heels were too high. Yes, Blake was trying to help. Reality was being rewritten in real time. Two men in Sutton security uniforms appeared. One of them was younger, maybe 30, with military posture and kind eyes. He helped me stand. Water streamed from my dress. My face throbbed. Ma'am, let's get you somewhere private, he said quietly. Thank you, I whispered. As they led me toward the main house, I looked back. Blake was already surrounded by concerned guests. Accepting their sympathy, Diane was directing waiters to refill champagne glasses. Wade was talking to the wedding photographer, probably making sure certain images disappeared. The string quartet started playing again. Mozart, something light and forgettable. The party continued. They locked me in an upstairs bedroom, guest room. Technically, elegant furnishings, attached bathroom, windows that didn't open, a gilded cage. I stood in front of the mirror. My cheek was already swelling, turning purple. A red handprint bloomed like a brand. Blood traced a line from the corner of my mouth to my chin. The baby kicked, hard, as if she was angry too. I pressed my hand to my stomach. It's okay, sweetheart. Mama's okay. But I wasn't okay. And somewhere deep down, I'd known I wouldn't be okay for a while now. The signs had been there, small at first. Blake correcting my stories at dinner parties. Blake choosing my clothes. Blake monitoring my phone. Blake explaining why I couldn't see certain friends anymore. Couldn't make certain decisions. I'd told myself it was love. He cared so much. He wanted to protect me. He knew best. When had care become control? When had protection become prison? A knock on the door made me jump. Vanessa, Blake's voice, soft and pleading. Baby, please, let me explain. I said nothing. I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. The stress with the merger. My father's been writing me all week. I never meant to. You know I'd never hurt you. Except he had. In front of 300 witnesses who'd all decided not to see it. I love you, he continued. I love our daughter. This won't happen again, I swear. Just open the door. Let's talk. Every instinct screamed at me to stay silent, but years of conditioning kicked in. Good wives communicate. Good wives forgive. Good wives give second chances. My hand reached for the doorknob, then stopped. From my purse on the dresser, my phone buzzed. I retrieved it. Text from Jill. Don't open that door. I'm getting help. Troy has footage. Troy, the security guard who'd helped me inside. Another text appeared. This one was a video file. I pressed play. The footage was crystal clear. 6 angles from 6 different security cameras. Every camera showed the same thing. Blake's hand striking my face. Me falling. The crack of impact audible, even over party noise. Undeniable. Irrefutable. Real. Vanessa. Blake's voice had an edge now. Open the door. I backed away from it. No. Don't make this difficult. Leave me alone. That's my room too. That's my house. That's my baby you're carrying. His baby, his house, his wife, his property. The doorknob rattled. He was trying his key. The lock's been changed. I lied. Silence. Then footsteps retreating down the hall. I sat on the bed, phone clutched in my shaking hand, and waited for morning. At 2:17 in the morning, Jill rescued me. She used the service entrance. Avoiding security cameras, Wade hadn't thought to upgrade. Found me still sitting on the bed, still in my wet dress, still holding my phone like a lifeline. Come on, she whispered. We're leaving. They'll stop us. Troy's on duty. He's looking the other way for the next 15 minutes. I grabbed my purse. Nothing else. The clothes, the jewelry, the life I'd built here, all of it could burn. We made it to Jill's Honda in the back lot. She drove fast, checking mirrors constantly, past the estate gates, onto the main road. 5 miles, 10, 15. We're out, she said. You're safe now. I wanted to believe her. I closed my eyes and let relief wash over me. The baby kicked again, gentler this time. We'd made it. Then blue and red lights exploded behind us. No, I breathed. Jill pulled over. A police cruiser stopped behind us. The officer who approached wasn't local. I recognized him from the wedding. Sheriff Frank Coleman, Blake's college roommate. He tapped on Jill's window. She lowered it slowly. Evening, ladies. License and registration. We weren't speeding, Jill said. Broken taillight. He shone his flashlight into the car, pausing on my face. Mrs. Sutton, your husband reported you missing. He's very worried about you and the baby. I'm not missing. I'm leaving. Coleman's expression was professionally sympathetic. Ma'am, you're 7 months pregnant and clearly in distress. Look at your face. You need medical attention. I'm fine. I just want to go to my friend's house. I can't let you do that. Mr. Sutton has expressed concern about your mental state. Prenatal depression can be serious. I need to take you back to the estate for a medical evaluation. You can't force me. Actually, Connecticut law allows me to place someone in protective custody if they're a danger to themselves or others. You're carrying a child, Mrs. Sutton. That makes this situation delicate. Jill turned to me, face pale. Nessa, this is illegal. He can't do this. But he could, and we both knew it. Money bought many things. Complicit law enforcement was just one item on the menu. 20 minutes later, I was back at the estate. Diane met us at the door in her silk robe, playing concerned mother perfectly. Thank God you're safe, she said. Come inside, dear. Morrison is waiting. Dr. Morrison was the family physician, Sutton payroll for 15 years. He examined my face with professional detachment, declared the injury minor, and suggested I might benefit from anxiety medication during this stressful time. I'm not anxious. I'm being held prisoner. Pregnancy can cause paranoid thoughts, he said gently. Hormonal fluctuations? It's very common. They were gaslighting me with medical degrees and badges. Blake appeared in the doorway of the examination room. He'd changed into casual clothes, looked exhausted and repentant. Can I speak to my wife alone? He asked. Dr. Morrison nodded and left. Diane followed, closing the door behind her. Blake sat in the chair across from me. Didn't approach, didn't touch. Smart. I know you're angry, he said. Angry doesn't cover it. What I did was unforgivable. I know that, but leaving in the middle of the night, that scared me. Vanessa, what if something happened to you? What if the baby came early? You hit me. I know. And I'll regret it for the rest of my life. I'm scheduling therapy, anger management, whatever it takes. Just don't leave, please. I'd heard versions of this speech before. After the first time he'd shoved me against a wall, after he'd thrown a glass that shattered inches from my head, after he'd grabbed my throat during an argument about dinner plans. Each time, he swore it was the last time. Each time, I believed him. But this time was different. This time there were witnesses. This time there was video. I have footage, I said quietly. 6 cameras worth. His expression flickered. Footage of you hitting me, clear as day. So before you spin more lies about me falling, remember that. He stood slowly. The repentant husband mask slipped just enough for me to see the calculation underneath. Where's this footage? Safe. Who has it? Does it matter? It exists. Everyone at that wedding saw what you did. You can't make this disappear. Blake smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. You'd be surprised what can disappear with the right motivations. He left me alone in the examination room. Through the door, I heard him talking to his mother in low, urgent tones. My phone buzzed. Text from Jill. Troy sent copies to 3 different emails. They can't erase all of them. Hang tight. Another text appeared. Unknown number. This is Troy. I'm sorry I couldn't do more tonight, but I got you. That footage is backed up 6 ways. They can't bury it. For the first time since the slap, I felt something like hope. Morning came with unexpected developments. Jill arrived at 8 carrying coffee and determination. Diane tried to turn her away at the door. Jill pushed past her. "I'm her medical proxy," Jill announced. "You can call your lawyers, but I'm not leaving." It was a bluff. I hadn't made Jill my medical proxy. But Diane didn't know that. She retreated with a tight smile, promising to speak with Wade. In the guest room that had become my cell, Jill laid out the plan. Troy gave me all the footage, 6 angles, perfect quality. We're taking it straight to Wade. Not Blake, not Diane. The man at the top. Wade won't help me. He'll protect Blake. Maybe, but he also protects the Sutton name. And this, she held up the USB drive. This is a PR nightmare. Wade built his empire on reputation. He won't let Blake destroy it. It made sense. Wade was ruthless, but he was rational. The footage could tank the company's stock, destroy business relationships, unravel decades of carefully cultivated image. "We need a lawyer first," I said. "Already handled. Marcus Reed. He's supposed to be the best. He's meeting us at Wade's office at noon." Marcus? Blake's college roommate. The one who'd complimented me at the wedding. I wasn't sure about using someone in Blake's circle, but Jill insisted he was independent, successful enough not to need Sutton money. Wade's downtown office occupied the top floor of a glass tower overlooking Long Island Sound. His assistant, Candace Frost, a woman whose face looked like it had forgotten how to smile decades ago, led us to the conference room. "Mr. Sutton will be with you shortly," she said, eyeing my bruised face with professional disinterest. Marcus arrived next, 40-something, expensive suit, confident handshake. "Vanessa, I'm so sorry about what happened. Blake called me this morning. I told him I couldn't represent him in this situation. Conflict of interest. Thank you for coming." "Of course. May I see the footage?" Jill handed him the USB drive. He plugged it into the conference room screen. We watched in silence as the video played. All 6 angles. The slap, the fall, the cover-up. When it ended, Marcus was pale. "This is irrefutable. With this evidence, you can get a restraining order, file charges, secure full custody. Blake won't have a legal leg to stand on." The conference room door opened. Wade entered, followed by Diane and Candace. "No Blake." "Mrs. Sutton," Wade said, taking his seat at the head of the table. "I understand you wanted to speak with me." I straightened in my chair. My face throbbed, but I kept my voice steady. "I want protection. I want out. And I want Blake to face consequences for what he did." "I see. And you've brought a lawyer. How very prepared." He nodded to Marcus. "Reed, I didn't realize you'd switched from corporate to family law. This seemed important," Marcus replied. Wade's gaze shifted to the screen. "Is that the footage I've been hearing about?" "It is. Would you like to see it? Please?" We watched it again. Wade's expression never changed. Diane looked away during the slap. Candace took notes. When it ended, Wade leaned back in his chair. "Well, that's certainly damning. Your son assaulted your pregnant daughter-in-law in front of 300 witnesses," Jill said. "What are you going to do about it?" Wade studied me for a long moment. Then he spoke. "Mrs. Sutton, Vanessa, may I call you Vanessa? Here's what I see. I see a young woman who married into a powerful family, a woman with no career, no independent income, no family of her own to speak of, a woman who is now carrying the Sutton heir." My stomach dropped. He continued, "I also see footage that could be very damaging to my son, to my family, to my business interests. So let's discuss solutions." "Solutions," I repeated. Candace slid a document across the table. "A settlement agreement, $500,000, full medical care for you and the child, a residence of your choice, anywhere in the country except Connecticut. In exchange, you sign a non-disclosure agreement and relinquish all custody claims." The room tilted. "You want to buy my baby, Fesum? We want to ensure she's raised in the family she belongs to, with the resources and opportunities the Sutton name provides. She belongs with her mother. Does she want?" Wade's voice was soft, dangerous. Because I've had my team do some research on you. Vanessa, your father was an alcoholic who died in a drunk driving accident. Your mother suffers from depression, lives on disability. You yourself have no college degree, no job history beyond retail. Tell me, what kind of life can you provide? A life where she's not raised by a man who beats women. Blake made a mistake. One mistake. In a moment of stress, it won't happen again. You can't promise that, and you can't promise you'll be a stable mother. In fact, he nodded to Candace, who produced another document. This is a psychiatric evaluation. Dr. Morrison has expressed serious concerns about your mental state, paranoid ideation, difficulty bonding with the unborn child, threats of self-harm. That's a lie. I never said any of those things. You were placed in protective custody last night. Sheriff Coleman had to intervene when you fled in a delusional state. Dr. Morrison documented your combative behavior. It's all here in writing. Marcus leaned forward. Mr. Sutton, these allegations are fabricated and you know it. The video evidence clearly shows. The video shows my son trying to help his wife after she stumbled. Everything else is interpretation. An interpretation, counselor, is very expensive to litigate. I turned to Marcus. Tell him he's wrong. Tell him we have a case. Marcus opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Vanessa, Mr. Sutton makes a valid point. Legal battles with families like this can take years, cost millions, and judges tend to favor stable two-parent homes with financial resources. Whose side are you on? Yours. I'm just being realistic about what we're facing. Something in his tone was wrong. I looked at Wade, at his satisfied expression, and understanding crashed over me. You're on their payroll, I said to Marcus. What? No, I'm an independent. How much did they pay you? When did they get to you last night this morning? Vanessa, you're being paranoid. Am I? I stood, legs shaking. Did Wade Sutton call you this morning before you called Jill? Marcus's silence was answer enough. Jill stood too, grabbed my arm. We're leaving. Sit down. Wade's voice cracked like a whip. Both of you, we're not finished. Yes, we are, Jill said. Candace moved to block the door. Mr. Sutton hasn't dismissed you. Get out of our way. I don't think you understand the situation. Wade said, you walk out of here without signing that agreement, and things get very difficult for you. Vanessa, very difficult indeed. Court battles, custody evaluations, psychiatric holds. Your friend Jill here, I can make her life complicated too. Audits, investigations. Legal troubles tend to multiply when you're fighting people with resources. I stared at him. This was what real power looked like. Not violence, not rage, just cold calculation and unlimited means. I need time to think, I managed. You have 24 hours. After that, the offer decreases significantly, and we move forward with filing for emergency custody based on Dr. Morrison's evaluation. Jill and I left the building in silence. Outside, the spring sunshine felt obscene. Beautiful day, horrible world. He's bluffing, Jill said finally. He has to be, but we both knew he wasn't. We returned to Jill's apartment in a daze. She lived in a converted warehouse in a neighborhood the Suttons wouldn't visit without armed security. Small, cluttered, safe. I collapsed on her couch. Everything hurt. My face, my pride, my hope. We need a new lawyer, Jill said. A real one, someone Wade can't buy. With what money I have $17 in my checking account, Blake controlled everything. Then we go public. Post the video online. Let it go viral. Wade can't threaten all of the internet. He'll sue us for defamation. Destroy us. So what do? Roll over and let them take your baby. Before I could answer, someone knocked on the door. We both froze. Jill checked the peephole, frowned. It's a girl, young. I don't know her. Don't answer it. Another knock. Then a voice, young and scared. Please, I need to talk to Vanessa Sutton. It's about Blake. It's important. Jill and I exchanged glances. She cracked the door, chain still on. A girl stood in the hallway. Early 20s, pretty in an expensive way. Designer clothes, nervous hands, and unmistakably pregnant. "Who are you?" Jill demanded. "My name is Ivy Claire. I'm pregnant with Blake Sutton's baby." The world stopped spinning for a moment. Jill let her in. Ivy entered like someone walking into enemy territory. Her eyes found me immediately. "You're Vanessa. I've seen pictures. What do you want?" "To tell you the truth about Blake, about everything." She sat carefully, hands on her stomach. 4 months along, maybe finally wept, young enough to be in college. "Blake and I met 8 months ago," Ivy began. "At a tech conference in Miami. He told me his name was Brandon, said he was divorced, said his ex-wife was crazy, trying to scam him with a fake pregnancy to get money." My blood ran cold. "We started seeing each other. He flew me to different cities, Boston, Chicago, San Francisco. Always nice hotels, always private. He said he had to keep our relationship quiet because his ex was stalking him, threatening him." "He was lying," I said flatly. "I know that now. Last week, I saw his picture in a business magazine. Blake Sutton, tech mogul, married to Vanessa Hartwell Sutton, expecting first child. I confronted him. He said the magazine was wrong, that you were just a business arrangement, that he was leaving you." "Then why are you here?" Ivy pulled out her phone, showed us text messages, hundreds of them. Blake promising love, Blake making plans, Blake describing exactly how he'd get rid of his problematic wife. One message made my blood freeze. "The wedding thing was perfect. Now everyone thinks she's unstable. Couple more incidents and I can have her committed. Then it's just paperwork." "He planned it," I whispered. "The slap. He wanted witnesses." "There's more," Ivy said. "Yesterday he called me, said he was done with me, said if I told anyone about us or the baby, he'd ruin my life, destroy my family. He was scary. I've never heard him like that." She started crying. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I thought he loved me." Jill put a hand on her shoulder. "Hey, you're not the villain here. He is." "Does anyone else know about this?" I asked. "No. My parents think I'm abroad for a semester. I've been hiding it. I didn't know what to do." I looked at this girl, younger than me, pregnant like me, another casualty of Blake's obsessive need to control. And suddenly I understood. This wasn't about love gone wrong. This was about a man who collected people like possessions. When we didn't perform correctly, he traded us in. "Do you have proof?" I asked. "Besides the texts, hotel receipts, flight bookings." He paid for everything with his credit card. Didn't bother hiding it because he thought I'd never figure out who he really was. Jill was already moving. "We need to document everything. Every text, every receipt, every lie. Wade wants to play hardball fine. Let's see how he handles a pregnancy scandal on top of an assault charge." For the first time since the wedding, I felt something shift. Not hope exactly, more like clarity. Blake had been playing chess while I played checkers. He'd been 3 moves ahead, setting traps, eliminating escape routes. But he'd made one mistake. He'd underestimated the damage women do when we stop fighting each other and start fighting together. "Are you willing to go public?" I asked Ivy. "Really public, because if we do this, there's no taking it back. The Suttons will come after you hard." Ivy squared her shoulders. "He threatened my baby. Our baby. Whatever it takes." Jill pulled up Troy's number. "We need that security footage released. Not in court. Online, but tonight. Before Wade can get injunctions. They'll sue, I said. "Let them. You can't sue millions of people sharing a video." She was right. In the age of social media, truth spread faster than lawyers could suppress it. We spent the next 4 hours planning. Troy agreed to release the footage anonymously to multiple platforms simultaneously. Ivy prepared her statement, gathered her evidence. I wrote my own account, every detail, every lie, every moment of manipulation. At 7 p.m., we pressed send. The video hit Twitter first. 6 angles of Blake slapping me. Clear, undeniable, brutal. Within an hour, 10,000 shares. Within 2 hours, 50,000. By midnight, Ivy's story had been picked up by 3 major news outlets. Photos of her and Blake together. Text messages. Receipts. A second pregnant woman coming forward to expose Blake Sutton's lies. The hashtag justice for Vanessa started trending. My phone exploded with calls. Reporters, friends I hadn't spoken to in years, unknown numbers. I turned it off. Jill opened a beer, handed me sparkling water. No going back now? No, I agreed. Ivy sat by the window, watching her phone light up with messages. My parents are calling. The press found them. I'm sorry, I said. Don't be. I'm the one who should apologize. I helped him hurt you, even if I didn't know. You were 19 when you met him. He's a predator. That's on him, not you. We sat in silence. Three women bound by one man's lies, watching the internet do what courts couldn't, deliver justice at the speed of outrage. By morning, Blake Sutton was the most hated man on the internet. News vans camped outside the Sutton estate. Reporters ambushed Wade outside his office building. Blake's company partnerships started issuing statements about reviewing their relationships. Stock prices dropped. And then Blake made his worst decision yet. At noon, a breaking news alert flashed across every screen. Blake Sutton arrested after confrontation with estranged wife. Jill turned on the TV. There it was, happening in real time. Blake had found Jill's address, had driven there in his Mercedes, had banged on the door demanding to see me. The footage from the building's security camera showed everything. Blake shouting, neighbors calling police. Blake trying to break down the door when I wouldn't answer. Real police this time, not Sheriff Coleman. Actual city cops who didn't care about Sutton money. They arrested him on camera. Paparazzi caught every second. Blake fighting the handcuffs. Blake shouting that I was his wife, his property, his right. Blake being shoved into a police car while flashbulbs exploded. The internet ate it up. My phone rang. Unknown number. Against better judgment, I answered. Vanessa, it's Wade. I should have hung up. Instead, I said, what do you want? To talk? In person? Today? My office? Just you and me. So you can threaten me again. No thanks. No threats, I promise. Just conversation, 30 minutes, please. Something in his voice was different. Tired, defeated. I agreed to meet him at 2 p.m. Jill insisted on coming. We arrived at Wade's office building to find news crews circling like sharks. Security smuggled us in through a service entrance. Wade's office looked different in daylight. Less intimidating. More desperate. He stood at the window, staring out at the city, and for the first time I saw him as what he was. An old man whose empire was crumbling. Thank you for coming, he said without turning around. You have 28 minutes. He turned, looked at me, really looked, at my bruised face, my pregnant belly, my exhausted eyes. I watched the video, he said quietly. All 6 angles, multiple times. I watched my son strike a pregnant woman, his wife, the mother of his child, and then I watched him lie about it. I know, you were there. I saw what I wanted to see that night, what I needed to see to protect him, to protect the family name. But after watching it again and again, he paused. I saw the truth, and I'm ashamed. Is this the part where you try to buy me off again? No. This is the part where I tell you that Blake is no longer part of Sutton Industries. As of this morning, his access to all accounts, all company resources, all family trusts has been terminated. I've filed papers to remove him as heir. He's on his own. I stared at him. You're disowning your son. I'm protecting what's left of my family's integrity. Blake has destroyed enough. He won't destroy the company I built, the legacy I was trying to leave. This isn't about justice. This is about damage control. You're right. It's both. Justice and damage control don't have to be mutually exclusive. Jill spoke up. What about Vanessa? What about his baby? Wade opened a folder on his desk. Full custody to Vanessa. Restraining order filed. I'll personally fund the best security detail in the state. He won't get near you or this child. And Ivy, I asked. Miss Claire is also under my protection. Her medical expenses will be covered. Her child will be provided for. Blake will have no contact. Why are you doing this? Wade sat heavily in his chair. My father worked in steel mills, came home every night covered in soot and exhaustion. He never missed a meal with us, never raised his voice to my mother, never lifted a hand. He taught me that real power comes from restraint, not force. He looked at me. I forgot that somewhere along the way, I raised a son who believes money and influence mean he can do whatever he wants. That's my failure. I can't undo it, but I can stop enabling it. Blake won't accept this, I said. Blake doesn't have a choice. His lawyers have already been instructed to negotiate plea deals for the assault charges. If he fights this, I'll testify against him myself. You'd do that, testify against your own son to protect my granddaughter, guess, without hesitation. The meeting lasted another hour. Lawyers joined us. Papers were drawn up. Agreements signed. When we finally left, my head was spinning. In the elevator, Joe whispered, "Did that really just happen?" "I think so. Wade Sutton just sided with you against Blake. Not with me against Blake. There's a difference." But it was something. More than I'd had yesterday. 3 months later, I sat in a courtroom watching Blake's trial unfold. The baby had been born 2 weeks earlier. Charlotte Grace, 8 pounds, healthy, perfect. She slept in her carrier beside my chair, oblivious to the drama swirling around her. Blake looked different, thinner, harder. Prison orange didn't suit him. His expensive lawyer, Marcus Reed, had been replaced with a public defender after Wade cut him off. Without money, without power, Blake was just another defendant. The prosecution presented the video first. All 6 angles. The jury watched in silence. Several jurors looked at me, at my baby, with sympathy in their eyes. Blake's lawyer tried to argue provocation. Emotional distress, temporary insanity brought on by stress and alcohol. Then Ivy testified, told her story, showed the text messages. Blake's face went red. He whispered furiously to his lawyer. The defense crumbled. After 2 days of testimony, the jury took 4 hours to reach a verdict. Guilty on all counts. Assault, harassment, violation of restraining order. The judge was a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and no patience for excuses. "Mr. Sutton," she said, "you used your privilege and power to hurt vulnerable women. You showed no remorse, no accountability. The court sentences you to 3 years in state prison, followed by 5 years probation. You will have no contact with either victim or their children. This protection is permanent." Blake stood. "Your Honor, please. I made a mistake. I have a daughter." "You had a daughter," the judge corrected. "You gave up that right when you assaulted her mother." Bailiff, "Remove the defendant." They took him away. He looked back at me once. Not with love, not with regret, with pure hatred. I held Charlotte closer. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. I'd prepared a statement. Read it carefully. Today, justice was served, not just for me, but for every woman who's been told she's crazy when she's telling the truth. Every woman who's been trapped by someone who claimed to love her. Every woman who wondered if she deserved better. I paused. Charlotte stirred in my arms. "I'm not a hero. I'm just a woman who refused to be silent, who had friends brave enough to stand with me, and who got lucky enough that the evidence was undeniable." "What will you do now?" a reporter called out. "Raise my daughter. Build a life. Remember that surviving isn't the same as winning, but sometimes it's enough." Jill drove us home, not to the Sutton estate, to a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a safe neighborhood. My things, my space, my life. Ivy was waiting when we arrived. She'd had her son 2 weeks before Charlotte was born, Benjamin. Beautiful baby with Blake's eyes, but none of his cruelty yet. "How'd it go?" she asked. 3 years, plus probation." "Good." We sat together. 2 women, 2 babies, survivors of the same storm. Troy stopped by with dinner. Jill opened wine, poured juice for Ivy and me. 2 women who don't stay silent. Jill toasted. We drank. 6 months after the trial, I learned that justice and closure are different things. Blake served his sentence. I rebuilt my life. Charlotte grew, started smiling, started sleeping through the night sometimes. But the nightmares didn't stop. The hypervigilance didn't fade. Every time someone knocked on my door, my heart raced. Every time my phone rang with an unknown number, panic set in. Ivy understood. She felt it too. We started meeting weekly. Survivor's coffee, we called it. Sometimes we talked about Blake. Mostly we talked about everything else. Troy became Charlotte's unofficial uncle, taught me basic self-defense, installed better locks, checked in constantly without being overbearing. Joe went back to bartending, but also started volunteer work with domestic violence organizations. Said she wanted to help other women escape before they needed viral videos in public trials. And Wade surprised me most of all. He sent a letter when Charlotte was 3 months old, formal, carefully worded, asking if he could meet his granddaughter. I said no. He sent another letter a month later. Same request. Added that he understood if the answer would always be no. Said he'd respect my decision either way. I said no again. The third letter came with photographs. Wade as a young man, standing beside his father in front of a steel mill. Wade at my age, holding infant Blake. Pages from his father's journal about being a good man, a decent husband, a present father. I tried to give Blake everything, Wade wrote. Instead, I should have taught him how to be decent. I failed, but I hope you'll let me try not to fail Charlotte. No strings, no conditions, just a grandfather who wants to know his granddaughter. If you'll allow it. I carried that letter around for 2 weeks, read it dozens of times. Finally, I called him. We met at a park, neutral territory. Wade arrived alone. No Candace, no lawyers, no power plays, just an old man carrying a stuffed bear. She's beautiful, he said, looking at Charlotte in her stroller. She has your eyes, and Blake's chin. Some things we can't escape. Genetics is one, but character, that's chosen. You'll teach her to choose well. Why are you really here, Wade? He sat on the bench beside me. Because I'm 70 years old and I've spent my life building things that don't matter. Companies, wealth, reputation, and I forgot to build the thing that does. Family, Marpian, real family, not the performance we put on for shareholders. You can't buy redemption with a stuffed bear. I know, but maybe I can earn forgiveness over time. If you'll let me try. I looked at Charlotte, sleeping peacefully, thought about the choice I had to make. Shut out everyone connected to Blake, or give this old man a chance to be better than his son. Supervised visits. I said finally, here, public places, and the second you try to pull any Sutton family power moves. We're done. Forever. Agreed. We sat in silence, watching Charlotte sleep. Two people connected by blood and trauma, trying to figure out how to move forward. 1 year after the slap that changed everything, I received an envelope with Wade's return address. Inside was a check, $5 million, and a letter. Vanessa, this is not a transaction, not an attempt to buy your forgiveness or Charlotte's future. This is an acknowledgement of wrong, the wrong I did by raising a son who believed power meant he could hurt without consequence. The wrong I did by trying to silence you instead of believing you. The wrong I did to every woman Blake hurt because I taught him the world would always bend to his will. This money comes with no strings, no NDAs, no conditions. Use it however you want. Give it away, invest it, burn it. The choice is entirely yours. What I hope is that you'll use it to build something good, something that helps other women who don't have viral videos or security footage or wealthy father-in-laws who eventually grow consciences. Charlotte is walking now. You showed me videos at the park. She's fearless, runs toward everything with arms wide open. That's you and her. That resilience, that refusal to be contained. I know I'll never be grandpa in the traditional sense, but I'm grateful for the hours you've allowed me, for the chance to watch her grow, for the opportunity to be better than I was. Your father-in-law who's trying, Wade. I stared at that check for 3 days. Jill said, take it. Ivy said it was guilt money, but still money. Troy said, do whatever felt right. I called a lawyer, not Marcus Reed, a good one this time. We set up a foundation, the Charlotte Grace Initiative, providing legal aid, housing assistance, and protection services for women leaving abusive relationships. I kept enough of Wade's money to buy a house. Small, safe, ours. The rest went to the foundation. Wade called when he heard, That's good work. Vanessa, your mother would be proud. My mother's still alive. Wade, I know, I just meant it's good work. Thank you for the opportunity to do it. We were getting better at this. Not family exactly, but something. Blake got out of prison after 18 months. Good behavior. I heard through Troy that he'd moved to California, started using his mother's maiden name, tried to rebuild far away from the wreckage. Part of me hoped he'd changed. Most of me knew better. The restraining order was permanent. He couldn't contact me, couldn't come near Charlotte, but sometimes I wondered if he thought about her, about the daughter he'd never know. Then I stopped wondering. Some questions don't need answers. Charlotte turned two, started talking. Her first word was mama. Her second was no. I'd never been prouder. Ivy's son Benjamin was walking. The two kids played together while Ivy and I drank coffee and pretended to have our lives together. Do you think about him? Ivy asked one afternoon. Blake, sometimes. Do you? Less than I used to. Mostly I think about how I almost let him convince me I was crazy. How close I came to believing his version of reality. But you didn't. Neither did you. That's why we're here, drinking coffee, watching our kids. Living. Living. Such a simple word for such a complicated accomplishment. 3 years after the wedding, after the slap, after the trial, after everything. I stood in the conference room of the Charlotte Grace Initiative headquarters, looking at a wall covered in photos. Women we'd helped, families we'd protected, lives we'd rebuilt. Troy had joined as head of security. Jill ran the volunteer coordinator program. Ivy managed the legal aid department. We'd built something real. A young woman sat across from me, 26. Bruised face, half hidden by makeup. Pregnant, terrified. My husband says if I leave, he'll find me, she whispered. He says no one will believe me. He's a lawyer. He knows the system. I heard my past in her words. I believe you, I said, and we're going to help you get safe. Today if you want, right now. Just like that. Just like that. You deserve better than fear. Your baby deserves better. And the system he knows we know it better. She started crying. Relief, terror, hope, all mixed together. After she left with Jill to start processing her case, I sat alone in my office. Charlotte's picture was on my desk. She'd started preschool, made friends, knew nothing about the violence that preceded her birth. I'd tell her someday, when she was old enough, tell her that her father hurt people, that her mother survived, that her grandfather tried to buy silence before choosing integrity, that nothing about her origin story was simple. But I'd also tell her this: she was loved, fiercely, completely, by a mother who chose her every day, by a found family that proved blood mattered less than commitment, by people who believed surviving was just the first step toward thriving. My phone buzzed. Text from Wade. Charlotte's recital is Tuesday. Will you save me a seat? I smiled. Texted back row. Don't be late. He'd been showing up consistently for 2 years now. Never missed a birthday or milestone. Never tried to override my parenting. Just showed up. Brought books instead of toys. Taught Charlotte chess. Told her stories about her great-grandfather in the steel mills. He was trying. It was enough. That night, I picked Charlotte up from preschool. She ran toward me with arms wide open, fearless, exactly like Wade had described. Mama, I drawed you a picture. It was crayon chaos. Beautiful, meaningless, perfect. Tell me about it, I said. It's us, you and me and Aunt Jill and Aunt Ivy and Uncle Troy and Grandpa Wade. We're all holding hands. We're a family. I looked at the stick figures, the bright colors, the innocent understanding of family as chosen, not just given. Yes, we are, baby. Yes, we are. Driving home, Charlotte chattered about her day, something about blocks and a boy who shared his crackers, and how she told him sharing was important. At a stoplight, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. The bruise was long gone. The fear had faded to manageable caution. The woman looking back at me was tired but strong, scarred but surviving, changed but choosing to grow toward light anyway. The light turned green. I drove forward, always forward, never back. Because here's what I learned: justice doesn't heal everything. Truth doesn't fix all damage. Revenge doesn't satisfy the way we hope it will. But choosing yourself, protecting your child, building something good from the wreckage, that's not closure. It's something better. It's life. Messy, complicated, beautiful life. And some days, When Charlotte laughs, or Ivy shares a victory, or Jill makes a terrible joke, or Troy teaches me a new self-defense move, or Wade brings books and stays for dinner. Some days it feels not just like survival. It feels like winning. Not the way I imagined. Not the fairy tale ending where everything is healed and everyone is whole, but real, honest, earned. The kind of winning that comes from refusing to let violence define you, from choosing truth over comfortable lies, from building family with people who show up, not just people who share DNA. Charlotte fell asleep in her car seat before we got home. I carried her inside, tucked her into bed, kissed her forehead. "You're going to be okay, baby," I whispered, "because you come from a line of women who survive, who fight, who refuse to stay down." In the kitchen, I poured tea and opened my laptop. 27 new applications for the foundation. 27 more women who needed help getting free. I started reviewing them. It was going to be a long night, but that was okay. Some nights were for sleeping. Others were for saving lives, including, sometimes, your own. Outside, the city hummed with possibility. Somewhere out there, women were making the hardest decisions of their lives, to stay or go, to speak or stay silent, to fight or surrender. I hoped they chose themselves. Hoped they found their Jills and Troys in unexpected ways. Hope they discovered that the strength you find after breaking is different than the strength you had before. Deeper, harder, more real. And if they couldn't find that strength yet, well, that's what we built the foundation for. To be the voice that says, "I believe you." To be the hand that pulls them up. To be the proof that surviving is possible and thriving is worth the fight. Charlotte stirred in her sleep, called out, "Mama." Settled again, I closed my laptop and went to check on her one more time. She slept peacefully, safely, loved beyond measure. And in that moment, that was enough. That was everything.